So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
And so we come to spirit, the tone of spirit. Now we have the spiritual birth. There's been no arguing with error, no arguing with ignorance. He opened not his mouth. This is how the womanhood handles evil. And the epitome here is that the spiritual idea is the pure reflection of its divine principle. And she brought forth a man-child. She brought forth a child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, that strength of spirit. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Beautiful. That child was implicated, that idea was implicated right back to its principle. To catch up, to be caught up is to implicate back. It was implicated back. She gave it back to its principle. And herein is the safety and the strength of that idea. That's the safety and the strength of our idea, of the birth of the idea within us, that we don't try to hold on to it, but that it be immediately caught up to its principle, that it be given back, see, tracing all good back to principle. That's the way love handles every situation. To trace all good back to God. So to give every aspect of the idea. We never come back to that old standpoint of where the demonstration is made and then we hold on to that demonstration. We do something with it. We take it, we hug it to us. But it's always giving it back, returning it to its principle, letting it remain in its principle. Led on by the grossest element of mortal mind, Herod decreed the death of every male child in order that the man, Jesus, the masculine representative of the spiritual idea, might never hold sway and deprive Herod of his crown. And she's giving the example now, referring back to Jesus, that his life experience showed forth this same phenomenon, that he was the masculine representative, that it happened to him also. The impersonation of the spiritual idea had a brief history in the earthly life of our Master. So the history of it was brief. But so what? So what if it was brief? So what if our history is brief, or anyone's history is brief? Because of his kingdom there shall be no end. Whatever there is of our history that is of the nature of the spiritual idea will never have an end. For Christ, God's idea, will eventually rule all nations and peoples. 7,000-year period. Imperatively, absolutely, finally, with divine science. This immaculate idea, represented first by man, and according to the Revelator, last by woman, will baptize with fire. And the fiery baptism will burn up the chaff of error with the fervent heat of truth and love, melting and purifying even the gold of human character. So you hear that there is something very purifying going on this level of Christian Science where we still are, that as we are giving birth to that spiritual idea, that idea of divine science, it is just purifying and purifying everything that is of the nature of the human within us. After the stars sang together and all was primeval harmony, the material lie made war upon the spiritual idea. But this only impelled the idea to rise to the zenith of demonstration. See that? Destroying sin, sickness, and death, and to be caught up unto God, to be found in its divine principle. That's the zenith of demonstration, to bring the idea back to its principle. So that when Spirit gives birth, that which is born is that which belongs to principle and is principle's own idea. So we come to life. We've just seen the idea as the purity of its principle, the pure reflection of its principle, as being implicated or implied in its principle, being taken back into its principle. Now we come to life, where she will show that the spiritual idea irresistibly and irrevocably leads to divine heights, the way of life. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 years. So she fled into the wilderness, which was a place prepared of God. It's a state of consciousness, whether we see a wilderness as a wilderness or as a place prepared of God. That they should feed her there. She's going to be fed and maintained and sustained and kept by life, by that fatherhood sense of life, for 1,260 years, which is really a symbol for the 3.5. It's another form of the 3.5, but it is the other side of the 3.5. It is the understanding of that divine principle as life now, as truth, and as love. The marginal heading there is spiritual guidance. She speaks here several times about the guiding, being guided, of being led. As the children of Israel were guided triumphantly through the Red Sea, you see that life is leading along the way of life. the dark ebbing and flowing tides of human fear as they were led through the wilderness. See those 12 tribes? As those 12 tribes were led, walking wearily through the great desert of human hopes, and anticipating, here's a touch of love, anticipating, having the promise, anticipating the promised joy. So shall the spiritual idea guide all right desires in their passage from sense to soul, from a material sense of existence to the spiritual. That's the question of life, of being led out of one sense of life into another, up to the glory prepared for them who love God. You hear the love, the promise of love in it. And that stately science pauses not, but moves before them, a pillar of cloud by day and of fire by night, leading to divine heights. To show that life, the way of life, is an ascending way, that you are going the ascending way. If we remember a beautiful description which Sir Walter Scott puts into the mouth of Rebecca the Jewess in the story of Ivanhoe, when Israel, of the Lord beloved, out of the land of bondage came, her father's God before her moved, an awful guide in smoke and flame. We may also offer the prayer which concludes the same hymn. And oh, when stoops on Judah's path, in shade and storm the frequent night, be thou long-suffering, what is that? Love? Slow to wrath, love, a burning and a shining light, accentuating the quality of love, the attitude of love, the quality of the womanhood sense to persevere on that way, to go that way that science is leading you, and not to lose your standpoint, to forfeit your standpoint. And what is next? What comes after that? We have the tone of truth. The epitome is that the spiritual idea is always victorious. So that we are led to divine heights, we're led along the way of life, and that way leads us to the victory of truth. Victory in the warfare with error, the divine method of warfare. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. The Old Testament assigns to the angels God's divine messages, which is what we said when we took that angel of the 10th chapter. We said an angel is a divine message. And now she's going to tell us something about these angels, that they are divine messages, that they have different offices. Michael's characteristic is spiritual strength. He leads the hosts of heaven against the power of sin, Satan, and fights the holy wars. He fights the holy wars. Gabriel, and now she brings in Gabriel, who doesn't appear in Revelation at all, isn't mentioned in Revelation. So the casual reader says, oh, brother. She doesn't even know that Gabriel isn't in there. Here she is giving an interpretation, so-called, of Revelation, and brings in an angel that only appears 4 times in the Bible and appears twice in Daniel and twice in Luke, and doesn't appear in Revelation at all. Gabriel has the more quiet task of imparting a sense of the ever-presence of ministering love. Gabriel came to Mary. Gabriel came to Daniel twice, and Gabriel came to Mary. And to Zechariah, wasn't it Zechariah? First to Zechariah and then to Mary in in Luke, to announce the coming of the Holy Ghost, to announce the birth of the idea of divine science, to announce the birth, the next stage of development of eternal life, truth, and love. That's the definition of the Holy Ghost, divine science. So Gabriel is closely connected with divine science, with love. And you hear that that's what she's saying here, that he has the more quiet task of imparting a sense of the ever-presence of ministering love. She doesn't say, he fights the holy wars thus and thus and thus way. He doesn't fight at all, Gabriel. These angels, both of them, deliver us from the depths. So there are 2 means of deliverance, 2 methods of deliverance that are depicted here. Truth and love. Truth and love come nearer in the hour of woe when strong faith or spiritual sense wrestles and prevails through the understanding of God. As though to utilize both of those angels and show that in the hour of woe, when strong faith, and I believe we're in one of the woes, are we not? Do you recall? In respect to Revelation, I believe we're in one of those 3 woes. I may be wrong. No, perhaps I'll have to check on that. But in the hour of woe, when strong faith or spiritual strength wrestles and prevails, there's a wrestling first, the Michael sense, and a prevailing, what she says, but prevailing through the understanding of God. That's a love sense. The Gabriel of his presence has no contests. You hear love? Love has no contest. To infinite, ever-present love, all is love. And there is no error, no sin, no sickness, no death. Against love, the dragon warreth not long, for he is killed by the divine principle. Truth and love prevail against the dragon, because the dragon cannot war with them, can't war with either of them. And thus endeth the conflict between the flesh and spirit. So she's giving us those two angels, Michael, who leads the hosts of heaven against the power of sin and Satan and fights the holy war. Gabriel, who has the more quiet task. He is imparting a sense of the ever-presence of ministering love. See, she's going to accentuate even more what she sees as the mission of Christian Science as she brings in the Gabriel sense. She's going to move right into the field of love, and in a way the attractor of the field of truth gives way now to love, and so truth will diminish in its accentuation, and love will take on the greater accentuation as she shows the place value of her mission in the Apocalypse chapter. There where she says she's speaking about the Gabriel of his presence, you see on line 6 of 567. She finishes that paragraph giving us a touch of the 4 levels. Max Kapler brings this out. I'm not sure at the moment whether John Dorley does or not, but Max Kapler has elaborated this in his talks. He says the science level is as follows. The Gabriel of his presence has no contests. To infinite, ever-present love, all is love. And then the equipolant statement that joins it, and there is no error, no sin, sickness, nor death. Then a touch of divine science. Against love the dragon warreth not long, for he is killed by the divine principle. A touch of absolute Christian Science, truth and love. That truth and love prevail against the dragon, because the dragon cannot war with them. And then Christian Science, thus endeth the conflict between the flesh and spirit. You see where Christian Science draws all its power from absolute Christian Science, which draws its power from divine science, which draws its power from the infinite one principle of science itself. Revelation will deal with the dragon from the standpoint of Michael, the truth. But the textbook now will not take up that method, will not pursue that method, and that's why she can move from the 12th chapter all the way up to the, the 21st chapter, where we have the coming in of the city four square. So in Revelation, you have all those chapters, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, perhaps even 19, showing the Michael method, showing how we work the whole thing out with the accentuation on truth, on a warfare, on a fighting of the holy war. But Science and Health doesn't need to deal with those chapters of 13 through 19 or 13 through 20, because it deals with error from the standpoint of love. She takes the standpoint of Gabriel. So we go on, and we're still in this tone of truth. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him, cast out of heaven. That false claim, that ancient belief, that old serpent whose name is devil, evil, claiming that there is intelligence in matter, either to benefit or to injure men, is pure delusion, the red dragon. And it is cast out by Christ truth, the spiritual idea, and so proved to be powerless. The words cast unto the earth show the dragon to be nothingness. It's a symbol apparently for the nothingness. Something is cast out of heaven and unto the earth. It is dust to dust, like to like, like knowing like. And you have that in the second record of creation, that Cain was, in a manner of speaking, cast out, that he was sent out into the land of Nod. And that was the end of that. And therefore, in his pretense of being a talker, he must be a lie from the beginning. His angels or messages are cast out with their author. So when the source goes, when the origin goes, the offspring of that origin goes with it. When the cause goes, the effect goes with it. The beast and the false prophets are lust and hypocrisy. These wolves in sheep's clothing are detected and killed by innocence. The Lamb of love. There's the Lamb again, the Lamb that was able to unseal the 7 seals, to see what God is, that Lamb which knows what the definition of God is. The answer to the question, what is God, is the Christ truth. It's the Lamb of love here. And that Lamb slays the wolves instead of the wolves slaying the Lamb. The Lamb, capital L, slays those wolves in sheep's clothing. Divine science shows how the Lamb slays the wolf. Innocence and truth overcome guilt and error. Ever since the foundation of the world, ever since error would establish material belief, evil has tried to slay the Lamb. But science is able to destroy this lie called evil. See, science is what discloses the nothingness of the whole thing. The 12th chapter of the Apocalypse typifies the divine method of warfare in science. See, in divine science. And the glorious results of this warfare. The following chapters depict the fatal effects of trying to meet error with error. The narrative follows the order used in Genesis. We read this before. We'll just finish with it. In Genesis, first the true method of creation is set forth, and then the false. Here also the Revelator first exhibits the true warfare, and then the false. So the Revelator sets forth the equipolant presentation of the two propositions, but Mrs. Eddy takes only the one side of that equipolant. She takes love's standpoint, the positive standpoint. And so we come to the subtone of love. And we will take that this afternoon.